Gosick was an anime that, since the original airing back in 2011, has just been sitting on my computer way deep in my hard drive.
That's what she said.
Just waiting to be released.
That's what she said.
Really, I'd just been saving it for a rainy day, but over time I really didn't know what that meant, so I really just saved it for where I was so bored and had nothing to do, to the point where I could just faintly make out Shia LaBeouf yelling at me. But I usually remember something I had to do, but this time I didn't, and after all those years I never forgot about this one show. The one thing that sells Gosick is that it's a mystery. Now, there's nothing new here. There are plenty of mystery anime. In fact, there's nothing new about mystery. Out of all the genres, mystery is probably the most abundant genre out there. Seriously, go out to your bookstore. The biggest shelf when it comes to fiction is probably mystery. I always wondered why, because to me, mystery sounds like the hardest genre to write. But I guess it's not. It does follow somewhat of a formula. State the problem, find the evidence, come to a conclusion. Of course, the best ones out there have their own spin on it, a twist at the end, or the evidence can give two conclusions, whatever, you get the idea. But that said, there is a problem when it comes to mystery anime, and that is there usually isn't enough time to tell the viewer all the evidence or information. It may go by too fast, and or not have much of an impact, and or simply not be as fun as reading it or watching it as a movie. Most of the time, 20 minutes isn't enough time for a mystery. But with Gosick, it's not only 24 episodes, but it's also based off a light novel series that ended before production began. Sometimes they'll adapt a manga or light novel while it's still ongoing to basically advertise the source material. But usually the source material will end just shy of a year after the anime was made. If they just waited it out, it would have adapted the whole thing and not had to make up an ending or make something that just ends. And most of the time, the anime is not that successful to make a season 2, so you'll just have to read the source material. So it's kind of rare to see an anime that was fully adapted. However, weirdly enough, there seems to be two main novels of this, both starting at the same date but ending earlier. I can't tell if these are the same thing or different. But either way, if it's based off the first one, then it'll be a full adaptation, along with the second one. Fuck, come on! The worst part is, since it's not translated, we may never know. But surprisingly, the best part about this anime is how it's structured, which I'll get on to later. But first, I didn't even get to talk about the plot. The show takes place in 1924 in a fictional European country named that, I'm not bothering. And it's also French-speaking for some reason. The anime is about a little girl named Victoria, who, despite her skipping classes and being very lazy, is actually quite smart. During the day, she usually stays up in the library that has so many fucking stairs Dark Souls is questioning it. As you can tell quickly, she's the Sherlock of this story. Extremely smart, but flawed and quirky. With that said, the Watson of the show is Kujo, a Japanese transfer student. Oh yeah, I forgot to say, this is a school. I think that's to be expected at this point. Who is the third son of an Imperial naval officer. Gee, looking back, that's a bigger Chekhov's gun than I remember. So yeah, he's the Watson of the group. And yeah, that's about it. Okay, it's not that he's not well developed. He's pretty likable. He's very nice and yeah. I'm just glad we have a main character with a quirk that's not being strong and silent. I'm getting tired of that. Besides that, there's just not really much else to describe them. Happy and cheerful, somewhat caring. He's also good friends with Victoria. I know that just sounds like quirks and not real development, but the thing is, Victoria also has quirks. She's very tsundere, and not in the violent way, more like in the pouty, verbal way. Which, for those people who don't like tsundere, I feel like this one is a lot more tolerable than the more traditional tsundere. Anyway, these two people start off with just having quirks, but then they slowly go on to have mysteries, and chemistry starts to develop. I think Victoria has more development than Kujo, but looking back at Sherlock Holmes, Watson didn't have much development, mainly because he was the one writing it all. I guess that's how the light novels were written. Speaking of Sherlock Holmes, another character that I'm surprised they copied was Inspector Lestrade, and here he's Greville de Bolas. Yes, they address the hair, get over it. He'd also be seen as a mix of Lestrade and Mycroft, because he's also Victoria's half-brother, and later on we do see that he is quite smart, but also uses Victoria to solve his crimes. If we're going off a Sherlock Holmes comparison, then maybe the character Avril Bradley is in some way comparable to Irene Adler, but not in the same way, and here she's in love with Cujo for some reason. I mean, okay, she's likable, I like her as a character, and she does have some development with Cujo. Like, 2.5, to be nice. She slowly does become a main character, and I'm not saying she has bad development, I just think it could be more. She does assist in some of their mysteries, and partake in, like, 2.5. Other characters are CL, the comic relief teacher, and the cafeteria lady, who's also the comic relief. And yeah, that's it. Not that there's not other characters, it's just that I can't say them without spoiling it. These characters may not seem like much, and yeah, at first they do just have quirks, but over time they start to use their quirks. Not with each other, but with their environments, like with the mysteries they encounter, and their reaction. Come to think of it, it really is like Sherlock Holmes. Although the mysteries they encounter at first may seem very episodic in nature, but I don't know if explaining this may sound like a spoiler, but basically it's not as it seems. First, it seems episodic, your standard Sherlock Holmes episodic mystery thing, but it slowly over time develops into a coherent story. Things from previous episodes show up later on and accumulate into one whole storyline that you really don't see coming. They do kind of hint at things earlier on, but I was just expecting 2 or 3 episodes story arc. This goes on for a while. It's like a quarter of the show. It's a great idea. Nowadays, episodic shows are kind of dying, and I understand why. It's easier to get your hands on shows, so it's impossible for you to miss an episode nowadays, but I still don't want episodic shows to die, and I think this show is how you should do it. It's a good middle between the two. Although looking back at what I just typed, it may seem like I just spoiled the experience for you. But whatever. Overall, it's a good show with really well-made pacing and of course mystery. Is that all I have to say? I guess when there's a good show, there's just not much to say about it. Well, the show is very cute, all the characters and how they act, but I guess you could find that subjective. Also, one weird thing is that even though it takes place in 1924, World War II starts pretty early. I mean, earlier they do hint at it. There's a scene where a fortune teller is hinting at a global threat. But I just thought that was a cool little nod to scare him. I didn't think it would come into the story. And not only that, World War I started and ended pretty much the same in this timeline, so we have a pretty short interwar period. Maybe since it's Japan, they wanted to shove it under the rug and stuff, but it's taking place in Europe. They barely talk about Japan. I guess they just wanted to keep the Victorian/Edwardian look. But hey, the 1930s had its own look, why not use that? Oh, one more interesting thing is that this show came out in 2011, but it never got an English dub until 2017. Like, just now as this video is being made. It was released on DVD and sub in Australia, but now it's on Blu-ray for roughly the same price. I haven't heard the English dub, but I'm expecting it will be alright. Although looking back, there are some few musical numbers that might be hard, but there's only like 2.5. Whatever, I have a mystery edge, and this show successfully scratched it. If you want a mystery anime that's episodic with a hint of the occult and filled with adorableness, then Gosick is what you're looking for.